Welcome to Crime Pulse, where today we examine a shocking case of betrayal, power, and tragedy. A sheriff's affair with a teenager leads to pregnancy, and what follows is a grisly murder that ultimately ends in another murder. Join us as we uncover the disturbing details of this twisted case and explore how an illicit relationship spiraled into deadly violence. Sheriff Malcolm Cotton Gaines was a well-known figure in Monroe, Louisiana. At 46 years old, he had been serving in law enforcement for over 2 decades. People in Monroe looked up to him for his strong leadership and charming personality. However, behind the badge, Malcolm had a darker side. He was carrying on a secret affair with 19-year-old Mandy Brooks, a local waitress at the Waffle House, for several months. While publicly Malcolm presented himself as a devoted husband to his wife of 20 years, Cyndie Gaines, the reality was far more complicated. Cyndie Gaines, a respected schoolteacher, had long suspected her husband's infidelity. Though she maintained a calm and collected exterior, the whispers of Malcolm's behavior had been eating away at her for years. She had chosen to stay in the marriage for the sake of their children and to keep up appearances in their tight-knit community. Malcolm's controlling and sometimes abusive nature put a strain on their relationship, leaving Cyndie feeling trapped and resentful. Mandy, on the other hand, was shy and vulnerable. She was easily manipulated by Malcolm, who promised her financial stability and a better life. She had recently graduated from high school and was dreaming of going to college, but those dreams faded as her relationship with Malcolm deepened. Though she tried to stay hopeful, she grew more anxious over time, especially as she felt Malcolm pulling her further away from her friends and family. When Mandy found out she was pregnant, everything changed. The young waitress felt trapped in a situation she had no control over. Malcolm was furious when she broke the news, and he quickly became cold and distant. Though he had charmed her early on, Malcolm had no interest in fathering another child, especially one that could threaten his reputation. This love triangle created a storm of emotions for everyone involved. Mandy was scared and unsure of what her future would look like with a baby on the way, while Malcolm felt the weight of his actions and the potential public fallout. For Cyndie, the affair and the pregnancy were a devastating blow. She had spent years enduring Malcolm's controlling ways, but the thought of her husband fathering a child with a woman nearly the same age as their son Tyler was too much to bear. In the days leading up to his death, Malcolm's once powerful persona started to crack. The pressure of the situation was becoming too much, and everyone in this twisted love triangle could feel that something had to give. On the morning of June 28, 2009, Sheriff Malcolm Cotton Gaines was found dead in his own home. It was around 8:15 a.m. when his longtime neighbor, Harold Jenkins, noticed something was wrong. Harold, a retired postal worker, had gone outside to fetch his morning paper when he saw that Malcolm's front door was slightly ajar. Harold knew this was unusual, since Malcolm was always particular about security given his position as sheriff. Concerned, Harold decided to check on his neighbor. When Harold stepped inside, he immediately noticed signs of a struggle. The living room was in disarray, with cushions thrown around and a broken vase on the floor. His heart raced as he made his way to the master bedroom, calling out Malcolm's name, but there was no response. When he reached the doorway, he froze. Malcolm's lifeless body was sprawled on the bedroom floor, lying in a pool of blood. He had been shot multiple times, and blood spatter covered the walls. The grisly scene was unlike anything Harold had ever seen. Shaking with fear, Harold quickly backed out of the house and called 911. "There's been a murder," he told the dispatcher, his voice barely steady. Within minutes, emergency responders were on their way. When the police arrived, they found Harold outside, pale and visibly shaken. He explained what he had seen, and officers quickly entered the home. They later described the crime scene as chaotic and violent. It was clear there had been a confrontation. Malcolm had been shot in both the head and chest, as well as in the genital area, and there were signs that the attack had been sudden. His service revolver, which was used in the murder, lay on the floor near his body. The house had other evidence of the struggle, overturned furniture and shattered glass, but nothing had been stolen, leading investigators to believe this was a personal attack rather than a random robbery. Detective Tillman immediately called for a full forensics team, and the investigation into the murder of Sheriff Gaines was officially underway. The small town of Monroe was about to learn that their beloved sheriff had been hiding far more than they ever imagined. The police arrived at the Gaines house within minutes of Harold Jenkins' 911 call on June 28, 2009. Detective Maria Tillman, a 15-year veteran of the Monroe Police Department, led the investigation. Known for her no-nonsense approach, Tillman immediately began assessing the chaotic crime scene. The house was in disarray, with furniture overturned, glass shattered, and a pool of blood surrounding Malcolm's body in the master bedroom. Malcolm had been shot 3 times, once in the head, once in the chest, and once in the genital area. The shots to the head and chest were consistent with a calculated murder, but the wound to the genitals stood out. Detective Tillman and her team theorized that the shooter had aimed at this area deliberately, perhaps as a sign of anger or revenge, suggesting a deeply personal motive. It wasn't just about killing him, Tillman would later say. This was about sending a message. The fact that his service revolver had been used in the attack pointed to someone familiar with Malcolm's life and routines. Forensic teams were called in to comb the scene for more clues. They carefully photographed the blood spatter across the bedroom walls and gathered evidence from the shattered vase and overturned furniture. There were no signs of forced entry, leading investigators to believe Malcolm had known his attacker and likely let them into the house. This detail, combined with the gunshot wound to his genitals, suggested the crime had been driven by emotions, perhaps rage, jealousy, or betrayal. By late afternoon, the police had pieced together a rough timeline of events. Malcolm had likely been attacked late the night before or in the early hours of the morning. His wounds, the lack of stolen items, and the overall condition of the house confirmed that this wasn't a robbery gone wrong, this was a targeted killing. The message sent by the genital wound hinted at personal or sexual motives. Detective Tillman and her team were now focused on uncovering who had reason to want Malcolm dead. As they gathered evidence, they prepared to question those closest to him, knowing that in a town as small as Monroe, dark secrets wouldn't stay hidden for long. Cyndie Gaines, Malcolm's wife of 20 years, was one of the first people the police questioned in their investigation. When she sat down with Detective Marcia Tillman on the evening of June 28, 2009, Cyndie's demeanor was composed, but her words told the story of years of unhappiness and betrayal. Cyndie admitted that her marriage to Malcolm had been in trouble for a long time. She explained that she had suspected for years that Malcolm was unfaithful. "I just knew," she told the detective. "There were too many signs." She detailed how she had frequently found evidence of Malcolm's infidelity in their shared SUV. It started with little things, stray hair clips or unfamiliar perfumes. Then Cyndie found the thong under the passenger seat, followed by used condoms tucked away in the glove compartment. Each discovery confirmed what she had feared: Malcolm was cheating on her. Her suspicions were finally confirmed in the most shocking way possible. About 4 months before Malcolm's murder, Cyndie came home early from her job as a schoolteacher and caught him in the act. She opened the door to the living room and found Malcolm and Mandy Brooks, the 19-year-old waitress from Waffle House, having sex on her couch. "I couldn't believe it," she recalled to the police. "I just stood there frozen, my husband with a girl young enough to be his daughter." The betrayal was too much for Cyndie to bear. She confronted Malcolm immediately, but he was dismissive, telling her that what she saw wasn't a big deal. "He said it was just sex and that didn't mean anything. But it meant everything to me," Cyndie recounted, her voice trembling. As if the affair wasn't enough, Cyndie soon found out that Mandy was pregnant with Malcolm's child. She overheard Malcolm on the phone with Mandy discussing the pregnancy late one night. She couldn't believe what she was hearing: her husband not only having an affair but about to have a child with someone else. Cyndie had put up with so much for so long, but this was just too much for her. The revelation of the affair, followed by the news of Mandy's pregnancy, had pushed Cyndie to her emotional breaking point. She felt humiliated, angry, and utterly betrayed by the man she had once loved. She told the police she just wanted it to be over, her marriage and her life. Despite her painful admissions, Cyndie remained calm during the interrogation. She denied any involvement in Malcolm's murder, insisting that although she hated what he had done, she hadn't killed him. The police, however, saw her as a key suspect, and her motive, years of betrayal and anger, was clear. Mandy Brooks, the 19-year-old waitress from the local Waffle House, had been swept into a complicated and manipulative relationship with Sheriff Malcolm Gaines. When police questioned Mandy, she described how Malcolm had promised her a future far beyond the life she was living. Growing up in a small town as the daughter of a felon, Mandy had big dreams but few means to achieve them. She had dropped out of school and was stuck working late shifts at the Waffle House, living paycheck to paycheck. When Malcolm entered her life, things changed. Mandy told the police he promised her the world and that he could take care of her and give her everything she wanted. Malcolm, who was nearly 30 years her senior, convinced Mandy that he would buy her a house, support her financially, and even take her on vacations. He once told her he was planning a trip for them to Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, a dream vacation for Mandy, who had never left Louisiana before. These promises made Mandy feel like she had a future she could look forward to. Malcolm's power and charisma made it hard for her to see the darker side of their relationship. However, things took a turn when Mandy discovered she was pregnant in late April 2009. After weeks of feeling nauseous and fatigued, she took a pregnancy test. The result was positive. Mandy was stunned. She had never planned to get pregnant, especially not with Malcolm's child. "I didn't know what the bleep to do," she told the police. "I felt trapped." The pregnancy made Mandy feel conflicted. On one hand, she thought Malcolm would keep his promise of financial security and provide for both her and the baby. On the other hand, she knew deep down that Malcolm had been lying to her. His promises of a life together felt hollow, and she feared he would abandon her now that she was pregnant. The pressure mounted, and Mandy began feeling isolated, not knowing who to turn to. Her situation became even more complicated when Cyndie Gaines, Malcolm's wife, confronted her. Mandy described the terrifying moment when Cyndie showed up at her apartment one afternoon holding a steak knife shortly after learning about the pregnancy. "She knew everything and said she was going to roast my baby on an open fire," Mandy recalled. Cyndie accused Mandy of ruining her marriage and demanded to know if the pregnancy was real. Mandy admitted it, trembling with fear. "I was scared," Mandy told investigators. Cyndie was furious, and "I didn't know what the bleep she was going to do." Mandy felt overwhelmed by guilt and shame, caught in a love triangle that was spiraling out of control. She told police that while she wanted to escape the situation, she never intended for things to get violent. Her vulnerability and fear made her a suspect, but she insisted she didn't have the strength or anger to murder Malcolm. Still, her pregnancy and affair made her deeply involved in the case, and police saw her as a key figure in unraveling the truth. The twist in the investigation came when police dug deeper into Malcolm Gaines's affair with Mandy Brooks. During another intense interrogation, Mandy broke down and revealed the disturbing details of how Malcolm had been manipulating her for months. The officers were shocked as she described the emotional stranglehold Malcolm had on her life. It wasn't just the promise of a house or a trip to Dollywood that kept her in his grasp. Malcolm had gone much further. Mandy explained that her mother, a felon with a history of drug offenses, was currently serving time in prison. Malcolm, using his power as sheriff, had threatened that if Mandy ever left him or revealed the pregnancy, he would use his influence to have guards torture her mother behind bars. The fear and pressure this created made Mandy feel completely trapped. As the police listened, the gravity of Malcolm's manipulation became clear. This wasn't just an affair that had spiraled out of control, it was an abuse of power that left Mandy feeling terrified and cornered. Detectives felt anger and disgust at Malcolm's exploitation. One officer later described Malcolm's actions as a shocking abuse of trust and authority by a vile slug. But there was more to the story. Mandy also revealed that she had dated Malcolm's son, Tyler Gaines, before becoming involved with the sheriff. Tyler and Mandy had ended their relationship just months before she and Malcolm started their affair, though Tyler had no idea that his father had stepped in as her new lover. The discovery of this prior relationship added another layer of complexity to the case. Tyler, who had been estranged from his father for years, had already confronted Malcolm after finding out about the affair, though he was unaware of the pregnancy at the time. This twist in the investigation opened up new motives and dynamics between the key players. Detectives began to wonder if Tyler had a role in the murder or if Mandy's actions were driven by fear of Malcolm's threats. The manipulation Malcolm exerted over Mandy and the tangled relationships within the Gaines family left investigators piecing together a puzzle that had become much darker than they originally expected. Tyler Gaines, 21, was no stranger to trouble. Described by locals as a wild card, Tyler had a reputation for being promiscuous and quick-tempered. His relationship with Mandy Brooks had been turbulent from the start. Mandy eventually broke up with Tyler due to his unfaithfulness. He was known to cheat on her with several women and even a couple of men. Friends of Mandy reported that she had been deeply hurt by Tyler's behavior, and the final straw came when she discovered that Tyler had been seeing other women behind her back. What made the situation even more alarming was Tyler's violent reputation. Despite his quiet demeanor around strangers, Tyler had a dark side that surfaced in his relationships. During police interrogation, Mandy revealed a shocking detail: Tyler had physically abused her on multiple occasions. In a tearful confession, she admitted that she had been pregnant with Tyler's child before their breakup, but Tyler had beaten her into miscarrying several times. The police were stunned by these revelations, adding another layer of tragedy to Mandy's story. When Tyler learned that Mandy was now pregnant with his father's child, his rage only grew. According to those close to him, Tyler felt humiliated and betrayed, not just by Mandy, but by his own father. Discovering that his father Malcolm had not only stolen his girlfriend but also gotten her pregnant was too much for him to handle. Friends described Tyler as feeling completely shattered and out of control after the news broke. One friend recalled Tyler storming out of a local bar after hearing a rumor about Mandy's pregnancy, visibly upset and muttering about taking care of it. During his interrogation, Tyler's anger and frustration were palpable. Police described his demeanor as volatile, noting that Tyler struggled to contain his emotions throughout the questioning. When confronted with the accusations, Tyler denied any involvement in his father's murder, but his hostility toward both Malcolm and Mandy was clear. Police later stated that Tyler's rage was hard to ignore. Though there was no concrete evidence linking him directly to the crime, Tyler's motive for murder was certainly strong. His father had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and Mandy's pregnancy was a constant reminder of the pain he had suffered. But despite his violent reputation and past abuse of Mandy, Tyler maintained that he had nothing to do with the crime. On the night of June 23, 2009, Cyndie Gaines finally snapped. After years of suspicion, betrayal, and humiliation, she could no longer tolerate the lies and manipulation from her husband, Malcolm. The discovery of his affair with Mandy Brooks and the fact that Mandy was pregnant with his child was the breaking point. For months, Cyndie had been quietly seething, her anger building to a boiling point. She felt trapped in her marriage, disgusted by the man she once loved, and consumed by the weight of her husband's infidelity. That night, Cyndie confronted Malcolm in their living room. The argument started like so many others, but this time, Cyndie had a plan. As Malcolm tried to brush her off, dismissing her concerns as paranoia, she grabbed the gun that Malcolm kept hidden in the closet. With trembling hands and her heart racing, she pointed the weapon at her husband. In a cold, quiet rage, she fired a single shot, hitting Malcolm in the groin. The police later theorized that the location of the wound was not a coincidence, it symbolized Malcolm's betrayal of their marriage. Malcolm fell to the ground, bleeding profusely, and Cyndie watched as the man she had spent years with lay dying at her feet. In that moment, a flood of emotions washed over her: relief, guilt, anger, and fear. She felt justified in her actions, believing Malcolm had deserved it for everything he had put her through. But at the same time, a deep sense of dread crept in. What had she done? Cyndie attempted to stage the scene, dragging Malcolm's body toward the garage in a desperate effort to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. But it didn't take long for the police to see through the ruse. When detectives arrived, they quickly noticed inconsistencies in Cyndie's story, and forensic evidence pointed to her as the primary suspect. The gun used in the murder was registered to Malcolm, and there were no signs of forced entry. Under interrogation, Cyndie broke down, confessing to the crime. The weight of what she had done finally hit her. As officers placed her in handcuffs, Cyndie felt a strange mixture of resignation and regret. She had hoped that ending Malcolm's life would bring her peace, but instead, it brought her nothing but sorrow and the cold reality of a life behind bars. In January 2011, Cyndie Gaines faced trial for the murder of her husband, Sheriff Malcolm Gaines. The courtroom was filled with family, friends, and curious members of the Monroe, Louisiana community. Cyndie's defense attorney, Lisa Carlo Beans, argued that Cyndie had been driven to kill Malcolm due to years of emotional abuse and betrayal. They employed the cheated-on wife defense, claiming that Cyndie was a victim of her husband's infidelity, which ultimately led to a breaking point. Carlo Beans presented evidence of Malcolm's long affair with 19-year-old Mandy Brooks. Testimonies highlighted how Cyndie had found disturbing evidence of Malcolm's cheating, such as used condoms and women's underwear in their family SUV. Carlo Beans painted a vivid picture of Cyndie as a woman who had been pushed to her limits and that Malcolm's callous behavior was the catalyst for the tragic confrontation that led to his death. Prosecutor Richard D.J. McDougall countered with a different narrative. He argued that Cyndie acted with premeditation, having confronted Malcolm multiple times about his infidelities. The prosecution aimed to show that she was fully aware of her actions when she shot him. They described the crime scene, emphasizing the brutality of the murder and the emotional toll it had taken on the community. As the trial progressed, Cyndie's family attended every session, hoping for a positive outcome. Cyndie appeared calm, but inside, she felt a whirlwind of emotions. She was anxious about the possibility of spending years in prison. The community's reaction to her case was mixed. Some sympathized with her plight, while others saw her as a murderer. After days of testimony, the jury deliberated. On January 21, 2011, they returned with a verdict: Cyndie was found guilty of second-degree murder. The news hit her like a punch to the gut. The emotional toll of the trial and the verdict weighed heavily on her. Cyndie had hoped for a lighter sentence, believing that her difficult circumstances would be considered. Instead, she faced a lengthy prison term. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, which left Cyndie feeling devastated. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she would be separated from her children for years. The verdict sent shockwaves through the Gaines family, who had long been respected in the community. Friends and family felt a mix of relief and heartbreak, unsure of how to reconcile the woman they knew with the crime she had committed. Cyndie's trial and subsequent sentencing highlighted the tragic consequences of infidelity and emotional abuse, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. After Cyndie Gaines was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of her husband, Sheriff Malcolm Gaines, the lives of those involved took dramatic turns. Cyndie was sent to the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, where she faced a stark reality. Many of her days were spent in solitude, reflecting on the decisions that had led her to commit such a tragic act. The guilt weighed heavily on her heart, knowing that her actions had shattered her family and brought pain to the community of Monroe. Cyndie's children were left to navigate their lives without their mother's guidance, while Cyndie struggled to find a sense of purpose behind bars. Meanwhile, the aftermath of the murder trial brought unexpected changes in the lives of Mandy Brooks and Tyler Gaines, Malcolm's son. After the trial, Tyler reached out to Mandy. They had a complicated history, having dated before she began her affair with his father. Tyler had always been known for his promiscuous nature, but his feelings for Mandy had remained strong even after everything that had happened. The two shared a bond over their troubled pasts, and both were trying to move forward from the chaos that had consumed their lives. In early 2011, just a few months after the trial, Tyler and Mandy rekindled their relationship. They began to see each other more often, meeting at local coffee shops and parks in Monroe. Slowly but surely, they found comfort in one another. Tyler, who had a reputation for being violent in the past, showed signs of change as he focused on becoming a better person. He started attending therapy sessions, working on his anger issues, and trying to be a supportive partner to Mandy. By the summer of 2012, Tyler and Mandy decided to take their relationship to the next level. They announced their engagement during a small family gathering, much to the surprise of those around them. The couple married later that year in a modest ceremony at a local park, surrounded by close friends and family. For them, it was a chance to build a new life together, free from the shadows of their past. As for Cyndie, her time in prison was marked by her struggle for redemption. She participated in therapy programs and worked hard to reconnect with her children during visits. Although her actions had led to devastating consequences, she hoped that one day she could regain their trust and be part of their lives again. The fates of Cyndie, Mandy, and Tyler illustrated the complex nature of love, betrayal, and the consequences of choices made in moments of despair. Each was trying to navigate their lives in the wake of a tragedy that had changed them forever. A sheriff, a scandal, and a murder, the story of Malcolm Gaines serves as a stark reminder that power, when misused, can lead to devastating consequences.